Good evening and welcome to another How to Rock the Virtual Stage. I'm your host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Every week we are here to help you to better rock the virtual stage. It's an ever expanding platform. I know there's podcasters, there's authors, there's speakers, there's leaders, CEOs, school teachers that are all trying to figure out how to present, how to really rock this and make this more engaging. My hope is to leverage my 30 years of broadcasting, public speaking, and help you better understand what it takes to come in and rock the virtual stage. Whether we all know it or not, we're all broadcasters now. And so a lot of what you need to learn is broadcasting tips. There's new things that you need to expand your skill set. The speaker stage will give you a lot here, but there's new things in the video, TV, media area that you do need to learn. So we're great to have great guests like we do have tonight. And we have a doctor in the house tonight. So behave themselves. We're going to have a great time there. But coming up next week, we are going to have Trisha Ben with me. And Trisha is the COO of C-Suite Network. Last week, Jeffrey Hazlitt, the CEO of C-Suite, was with us. Had a great conversation. Well, Trisha is the one that makes so many things work. She runs the Zoom box and many of the platforms on the virtual. She's a great host herself, speaker, author. So Trisha will be with us next week. Really looking forward to a great time with her. I see her almost on a daily basis now virtually. And then 2 weeks from now, we are going to have Mike Scribnick with us. Mike often drops in as a guest in the show just to hang out with us. He helps businesses and business leaders grow and get what they're really looking for, not just grow any old way, laser focus on target. And virtually, we need to do that even better because everyone's jumping online. There's so much stuff going on. He is really good at making that, and he's good at closing deals. He is good to give you tips on how to virtually close those deals. And that's going to be in 2 weeks with Mike. But tonight, we're going to have Dr.KAZ with us tonight. Now, Dr.KAZ has been a speaker for over 30 years herself. However, she is the CEO and she is the Sports Brand Global. More Sports Brain Global is her entity. I knew I was going to do that. She'll make me pay for that in a minute. I know. She is the brain trainer. This is all mental skills. And one of the big things you've heard me say, if you've been around us on the show before, is a lot of the adjustments we need to make is mental as speakers and leaders to overcome the barriers of doing the virtual stage. What a great guest night to this whole mind area is. And she works with elite athletes and Fortune 100 executives. She plays with the affluent, the popular, and yet every so often they get stuck. And we're going to talk a lot tonight about getting unstuck because that's the doctor's specialty. Dr.KAZ, welcome to the virtual stage tonight. Great to have you with us.
Thanks. Appreciate being here. Good to see you.
So I am very interested about, first of all, people call me Trigger. It's been 30 years of broadcasting. That's what most people do call me. I do have a real first name, but most people don't use it. But you have this whole thing. I read that it's Gitter Done Gal. It's Gitter
Yes.
Done Gal. Where did that come from?
That actually came out of Australia. I lived there from 1988 to 1998. And well, it goes all the way back to my bachelor's. My bachelor's was in animal science. I thought I was going to vet school. And my professors just used to say, "Oh, here she comes." They were all country guys out of University of Florida. Here comes a Gitter Done Gal, because it didn't matter what was going on. I could be, you know, called from where I was working as a bartender at midnight, going, "Hey, your pig is farrowing," which means your pig is giving birth. So get over here. And they would just say, "She's the Gitter Done Gal." And so I mentioned that in Australia, they love nicknames. And that was before I actually legally changed my name to just Kaz, no first name or last name. So they nicknamed me Kaz. And one of my friends said, we were talking one day and we were brainstorming, and he goes, "You are like the mind magician." And I said, "I prefer the Get Her Done Gal, because let's just get her done." And so it was like being in a small town where you see something at 10 a.m. and at 5, the next day in church, people are quoting it back to you, and you're like, what? And so that's what happened. It started in one small South Australia, Adelaide, National Speakers Association chapter. And by the time I got home to Queensland in Brisbane, my chapter knew. And so it just stuck. And that's what, the parents will say to me when I'm coaching my athletes, I see the same thing you do. And I often think, not quite the way I say it. There's a little bit of tone, yeah. But I tell the kids, at the end of the day, it's great for the Twitter moments, but
Oh yeah.
it's results. It's when you go to bed at night, if you can say, I'm proud of this, I'm proud of this, I'm proud of this. And it doesn't necessarily need to be handheld results. It can be, today I gave time to someone who really needed a moment, a shoulder to cry on, or today I helped solve an issue for someone.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and again, those nicknames, like you said, the whole Twitter thing for a second. I've lived with Trigger for 30 years. The number one question is, do you know Roy Rogers? You don't look like a horse. Okay, there's a whole comedy stick. You have Larry the Cable Guy, Gitter
yeah,
Done Gal. So, but for us in the speaking realm, for us in that entertainment and leadership area, those also become part of the brand and the marketing that sets it aside. It's easy to find Dr.KAZ, the Gitter Done Gal. It's easy to find Trigger. Talk to us about this a second. Isn't that kind of a great thing to have in the market we're in the world we're in, to be almost given those nicknames and those brand labels?
I have always found, I call them mind morsels. And I think if you have a way of presenting something that's fun and funny and easy to remember, that lesson sticks. So when I first went to Australia, they were like, oh, don't hire her as a speaker. She's got a PhD. She's really stuffy. And I remember someone saying, wow, you're nothing like your speaker kit. And that was my first light bulb moment. He said, your kit is really proper. It's very PhD-ish. It's very educated. He goes, but I'll listen to your 30-minute tape and you're really hysterical. And I went, okay. So I could go through like I always say, I do Dr.KAZ because I don't have a legal first name. And when I fly, they won't, I flew once under KAZ. Big mistake. Evidently that just screamed no flight zone. So now, I'd say to the kids, call me Kaz. But nicknames break down that perceived barrier. So I can stand in front of 400 CEOs from around the world. I just, a few months ago, I did a thing for EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, some of the top CEOs and their teams in the world. And I said the same things, little mind morsels that I would say to my 12 to 22-year-old athletes. Mm-hmm. And I still get emails going, yeah, we had an FTB moment. And FTB stands for flick the booger, meaning if it's a bad thought, I tell the kids, what do boogers and bad thoughts have in common? You don't go, oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'm saving that one for later. And they laugh. I'm like, no. So between 2005 and 2008, you'd see parents on the sideline doing this in a soccer game, meaning get rid of the red card thoughts, get rid of the negative thoughts. Your head is down. Doesn't matter. Next play. That's all that counts. Next play. Where's the ball? And so the kids would be on the field and they look over and see parents doing this, flick the booger. And they'd be like, got it. I'm over it. And so, to me, if you can, like trigger, and I'm old enough to remember the horse, but I thought of pull the trigger.
Don't tell anybody.
But see, I thought pull the trigger. Like, come on, So it's funny when I say Gitter Done Gal. Doesn't matter if you're a top level CEO of a $1 trillion company or you're a 14-year-old baseballer. we're rolling up our sleeves and we're getting to it. Like, let's just go.
So with that, you help people get unstuck. And in this world of COVID right now, as you talk about CEOs, executive entrepreneurs, athletes, we all got stuck in March, April, May, June. The world got stuck. I can only imagine how your phone blew up. While everyone else's calendar was shrinking, yours is probably taken off in a whole new level. But at the same time, you spend a lot of time on the mind. And I know you have a language, like you're talking about those little sound bites, because there is something about shorter is better. It's memorable, it's catchy. Talk about some of this a little bit about the language you use to help unlock stuck people, because I think it's really important as communicators. How do we best leverage that to help people get unstuck and get moving again?
So 34 years ago, I started training athletes in Australia, and I was doing a lot of public speaking to them. And I thought, if I didn't have to watch a swimmer for 6 weeks, if I just knew what they valued, like if I knew everything that was going on inside their brain, that would be so amazing. And so I thought, well, there's got to be a survey. At that time we had NLP, and Myers-Briggs type indicator had just come out. I used it with my master's. And so I thought, certainly there is something that tests every area of the brain. Well, there wasn't. So me being like, well, I need one, I just created what I call the brain language survey. So through a series of 3 different surveys, I use a well-known personality style indicator, I use NLP, and then I use one that I created for right brain, left brain, or balanced, male or female dominant, or balanced, and stress. And so when an executive team takes the brain language survey, or a 17-year-old hockey player, I know exactly what they value. I know what their gotchas are. I know their kryptonite. I know where they get taken out. So years ago, I used to say there are 3 places you can get stuck. You can get stuck in your head. And that's really an issue of knowingness and understanding and learning. But you can also get stuck in your heart. When you get stuck in your heart, that's an area of trust. Do I trust myself? Do I trust myself to choose the right club? Do I trust myself to throw this into the catcher's mitt? And so when you have a disconnect, or if you're stuck in the heart issue, then you're in trouble. And many times people get stuck between the connection of the head and heart. There's no dialogue. So results oriented people like, oh, don't give me any of that emotional stuff. Like, we're not going there. And then the emotional people are like, I'm not good with calendar. Like, don't do the whole goal setting thing. And so the last place, I always say, you can get stuck in your head, your heart, and the third place is your hiney. And your hiney is where you take action on. So am I being honest with myself? What I believe, I never tell a lie. And then in my heart, I know I speed all the time. I live in Texas. I think 30 miles over the speed limit that's a doable. I shouldn't get a ticket. So my action doesn't pertain. Some people say, do you lie? I'm like, yeah, I speed all the time. And they go, what? I go, well, that's technically a lie to the government. It says stay under 70. I'm at 85, 90. So when there's a disconnect in one of those 3 areas, or the communication between head and heart, then people really get stuck. Now, add in COVID, which is massive overwhelm and unknown.
Yeah.
No personality style loves unknown. There's the power and controls, we deal with it because we just forge ahead. We make it be known. But overwhelm, anytime you get overwhelmed in the brain or the heart, all of your weaknesses intensify. And so what happened in March was I started sending out messages to my kids, and I have this thing called How to Host a Great Disaster Party. So all my CEOs are calling me, how do we do a disaster party? Like, what do we do? And so we started walking through how you do a Zoom. I did several Zoom disaster parties. which were much different than doing them in person because I run around and give toys and do this. And that's part of the sort of game. But my kids, the first thing I said is, you are never going to lose your competitive edge. We are taking this on mentally. And so I instantly put out a report, how to stay competitive when you can't compete. And so April rolled around and, all the seasons were canceled. I had kids going to districts, regional, state, nationals, tiers. I had parents freaking out. I had freshmen in college going, what do we do? I had, juniors in high school going, coaches can't see me. We'll take that into summer. All summer competition was canceled, at least in Texas, in most of the states. Now, North Carolina, I had softballers that were playing, but it was very rare. I had kids in national leagues, international leagues canceled. Now we hit fall. Coaches are like, I don't know if I'm having a tennis program next year. Like if we don't play football. And so I've got parents going, what the heck? I got coaches now that won't come out and watch my kid play because they don't want to get COVID. And then it started in August. I had a footballer, his whole team got quarantined because no one on the team had COVID, but someone they were in touch with. And so that's what I've been dealing with. I had a volleyball team. 3 members were in quarantine. They just finished districts. They placed second. Mm-hmm. Now their entire JV team is in quarantine and they wonder if they have to now quarantine the seniors. Well, the varsity team, which then will take them out of state comp. And I'm like, and so it has been, and this is what I say to the parents, how you parent is exactly how I ask your child to play. And that is to take a deep breath, know what you know, and do what you do really well. And then get help in the other areas. And so my kids know, I call it BBs in the dryer brain. So like one of the personalities are the poodles, they're like, oh my God. And so if that happens on the soccer field, the court, and they're like, oh, where's the ball? Where's the ball? I always will say, we got to calm the BBs in the dryer brain. I just need you to focus on the red BBs. Where's the ball? Where do you need to be on the field or court? What do you need to do? What is the next step? And that's what we did corporately.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. Because this perfectly transitions to the business, the stage, everything now. Everything you talked about for COVID and for sports. So before we take the next step here, I want to launch a poll here real quickly so we get a sense of what people are going through in their own lives here. And this is for you, for those watching. Don't forget, second half of the show, you get to jump on in. You get to ask Dr.KAZ your own questions. So take good notes. But what causes you to get stuck most often, everybody? Is it financial matters? Is it the emotional stress we've been talking about? Is it the intentional planning where you just vapor lock? You can't plan anything. Is it your own mindset? Talk a lot about mindset. Is it other people's opinions of you? Do those matter more than anything else to you? Is it self-doubt or is it something other? What is it that gets you stuck? We're going to let everyone cast their vote as we go back a little bit here, because now you're making a shift into the brain language affecting virtual stage, the brain language affecting business, people jumping in with companies, with webinars. So how does that brain language, as you were just describing, affect like that poodle? They're all going, what am I doing? And then they don't do anything. So that's a great transition. Pick that up, please.
Well, I think number one, and I used to teach presentation skills in Australia. And I think, my personality, I had an employee once describe me as a pit bull in lipstick on a bad hair day with PMS. And everybody thought I was going to fire her. And I said, that is the most succinct description. I love you. And they went, what? And so I would first say, this is what you value. You value information. So if you need to have a little funny, back then it was overhead transparencies, PowerPoint hadn't been invented, pre-computers, but we would build in, the talks don't change. The mechanics of a good on-stage presentation online presentation, the mechanics don't change. It's the delivery, it's the vehicle. And so if you feel uncomfortable, if you start saying mentally, I am no good on Zoom, I don't know how to press that button, it just accentuates it, because you go down to look and you're like, oh, I can't find it, I can't find it. And so on stage, I've had things happen where I caught my shoe in a crack of the stage giving a presentation to 400 or 500 teenagers on self-esteem, was walking so hard and so fast in a very straight skirt above the knee. I catapulted. My shoe stayed on the stage, and I literally flipped in midair and landed on this boy in a Catholic school, landed on this boy's lap. And he's like, I'm not touching her, miss, I'm not touching her. And I'm dying laughing. My skirt got turned around, the zipper was in the front and the slit, and I went, well, dang. And I've learned that's the kids were dying laughing. And I got back on stage and I said, has that ever happened where you think, you know, your mind's going one way and your body and then everything? And I said, that has so much to do with your self-esteem. So I'm blessed that I can have those boo-boos and recover, but I teach people there are certain skills that you will need. Someone stands up and says, you're wrong. How do you handle a heckler? People fall asleep in person. They really fall asleep in Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, does anybody have so-and-so's cell number? Like, let's all take pictures and send him pictures of him sleep, you know, and it's just, it's life. And
Yeah.
so when you're presenting online, I think you do have to be a bit more animated. You have to bring in polls and certain things to keep the engagement. I can't be throwing you. I used to have motivational underwear. So I would get them to ask a question. They were called break bottoms. And they had things like, if it is to be, it's up to me on the leg. And so companies would buy them for their execs or their whole staff. And then they put the logo on the bottom. And so I have pictures of like companies with their logos across the butt, looking over the shoulder. But I would say, oh my gosh, that was a great answer. Stand up. And they'd be like, what? And so I go, turn around. And what? Yeah, I usually do men, not ladies. And so then I'd be like, look, I have motivational underwear. You can go home today and your wife will say, what did you learn? I don't know, but I came home with motivational underwear, and they will laugh. And so, you know, I can't be doing that. I could hold it up. Here's something, and people always laugh. I will go backwards here just a little bit. I keep this, and this is what I take, not the glass, but I take this. So these are woolly boogers, and they're so good. And I'll explain how to use them, but these are amazing. Whoops, these are super balls. You get in an elevator, the door's shut, you're by yourself, you whack it against the wall and you try not to get hit. These are so much fun. One of my favorites is Play-Doh. And we talk about why Play-Doh is so good. So I have that behind me and I can say, oh my gosh, great answer. Let me get a woolly booger. And they'll be like, what? You won. This is a cow woolly booger. You won the woolly booger. So when you get this and you get stuck and you're frustrated and you can't think and email, you just pass it back and forth. My kids do this, right hand, left hand. Stimulates all the different things, opposite hand, opposite side of the brain. So
that to me would be a great thing if you could send a woolly booger package or some of your tricks that you use, send it in a advanced kit for your presentation. This is really great, you guys. This is like gold. This is genius. So you send it as your advanced kit, so you know at some point you're going to do that little spit. They literally have this little box, and the CEO, the boss, the chairman, whoever goes, okay, she's talking about the woolly booger. I got one right here. And they
for
give
everybody,
the woolly booger in person. That's great.
So these are standing ovations. So I'll be like, oh my gosh, everybody gets a standing ovation, little hand clappers. But you're right. I send them a PLAYBOX.
Okay.
So it's a plastic toy box that I put all these toys in, and I'll have something different. Like it's way on the bottom. I have these miniature water guns, and I'll say, oh, like, Trigger, that was an amazing answer. Get him the water pistol. And I'll hold it up and I'll say, I love these. I fill them with ice cold water. And then I hit somebody in the back of the head, but they fit like in your blouse, in your pocket. And they're like, they just hit me. And you're like, I don't know who did hit you. And I always tell them, I have these squishy balls that you can get in the summer for the pool. They're called splash bombs. And so I'll give those out in the summer and I'll say, you know what I love about these? You can wet them and hit somebody as hard as you want and they don't leave a bruise. These are a non-lawsuit play toy. And people will laugh. They'll be like, oh, but you could send a PLAYBOX. I used to send brownies.
Yeah, this is
That's how I
ingenious.
got my job. I would send 4 brownies in a pizza box for all those who are speakers. And it would say, from Kaz's Kitchen. And the last line of my letter said, P.S. If you think Kaz is amazing on stage, wait till you taste her brownies. And then there was another P.S., P.P.S. Call for the recipe. 100% of the secretaries would call me. And on the box, it said, put these in the microwave for 7 seconds, run and hide in a closet. Do not share these with anyone else. And they'd say, oh my God, that was the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. What? Wow, how did you? I say, oh, those are homemade. I'll give you the recipe. By the way.
So let me interrupt you for a second because we're going to run our poll
Yeah.
back. But because what you're saying now, because that whole mental barrier of this is, people tell me this is so small, Trigger. This is such a small thing. What you just illustrated right there is, I keep saying this is ever expanding. You have now broken the glass from this to re-engagement, especially for millennials and Z's and baby. It's very tactile. They have their phone, they have their pencils, they're always moving something. So you have brought that back to life with the virtual stage. That is huge.
Well, do you want to know how tactile they are? This is when I started doing the brain language survey, 67%, the majority of people were visual.
Yes.
Marketing was visual teaching. Nowadays, and this is to me frightening, 87% are kinesthetic, tactile. And people are like, I don't understand why. I said, I do. Smartphones and games. This is all they do all day. Smartphones and apps and games. You engage the tactile, you change the actual chemistry in your brain. And that's the first thing CEOs need to understand. And as you said, online presenters need to understand they will go somewhere else if you are not constantly engaging them. And that means way beyond the polls. Right. You need to say, open up that envelope. Okay, who got the golden ticket? All right, this is where we're going.
So this is like perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. KAZ. Here's our poll results. And this what causes you to get stuck. Some of it is the intentional planning, but a lot of them went to the other categories. So it's not the financial, it's not the emotional, it's not the mindset, it's not people's opinions. So there's a whole nother gutter or trash can full of other. What do you think are some of the others that people get stuck with? Do you think that might be in that catch-all?
I started really delving into the brain research 2 years ago. And it's made a huge difference with the CEOs and the private people I coach and then my athletes. And that is the underlying emotion to any negative emotion is fear. And I think people don't even realize the fears, the subconscious fears they have. So I might feel uncomfortable doing an online presentation, but it's like, oh, I don't know the tech, or I don't know this. And I'm making all these logical head excuses. And the reality is, when I was in 3rd grade, I got embarrassed, and I never want to be embarrassed when people laugh. And so I have this fear of being embarrassed. And so fears are just like eye color, they're real to us. But as I tell the kids, when we can eliminate that fear, every emotion above it, anxiety, anger, frustration, confusion, overwhelm, uncertainty. Right now, I think people are getting stuck because they feel like they don't have enough information. And a very wise man in Australia once told me, he said, you're praying for wisdom. I go, yeah, I am. And he said, you got enough earthly wisdom. Start going for heavenly wisdom. And what I realized was it's not about the learning. It's about the doing, the application of what you learn. And it's like riding a bicycle. You don't know you need training wheels until you fall down a couple of times. Then you're like, I think I need something to hold me up here. And so right now, we've gotten lazy as a society. And people they were making great money and they were just taking advantage of the situation. And COVID threw a curveball, whether you were afraid to go out because of your age, your health. I had one company tell me, he said, Kaz, we did your disaster party in January after EO. And he said, we loved it. And my department heads thought this was the greatest thing we've ever done. And when COVID hit, he said, I had to lay off 60% of my staff. And I cried. And he said, but I called everybody back a month later and said, we need to do a disaster party right now, like right where we are, and see what we do. And he said, 2 months later, I have 100% of my staff back. And he said, because of what the skills you taught us through the disaster party and our creativity, and it's got games and tactile and craziness. And he said, if you'd have told me that, when COVID hit, I would be rehiring all my staff. And they're a home repair, plumbers, whatever, carpenters.
So we're going to bring everyone into the room for a second. I want you to explain that disaster party concept. Now, there was one comment coming in the chat box here. One of the people says, I personally do not have the luxury of being stuck. Now, like you said earlier, there are those of us, we just keep plowing full. And I am one of those people. I know many people that are the reverse of that, but there are those of us that just say, I don't have the luxury. I have to pivot, move, adapt, transition, and we just keep going. So there is that anomaly or A-type personality that both of them.
Well, what I tell people is you are stuck. You're stuck thinking you're doing the very best because you're moving, and you equate movement and with productivity. And that is not necessarily the case. So one of the things I challenge people is, okay, if you're not stuck, how could you do what you're doing better? How could you help more people's lives? How could you create another zero on the bottom line so that you could give to more charities? And they're like, I don't know how. And I say, well, then that's where you're stuck, because all of that's doable. If you're making $1 million, you can easily make 10 million. You're making 10 million, you can easily make 100 million. And so it is about, oh, well, maybe I'm stuck in my own ideas. Maybe I need to get a mastermind. Maybe I need to branch out and do something like this and really stir the pot. So sometimes we just get stuck in who we are because it's comfortable. And I'm not saying change for the sake of change, but I always think the more, we only use 7 to 9% of our brain. Mm-hmm. Imagine if all your staff used another 1% more. You'd be like, oh, this is amazing.
So we brought everybody in. If you want to turn on your cameras, turn on your microphones in a minute. We were going to bring you in one at a time. You can raise your hands and you can ask the question to Dr. Kaz. Please, this is your chance to get some free coaching. But I want you to, as they're kind of pondering their questions as we go through this, I want you to address right now that party. This concept, I think, is really revolutionary. And I tell people celebrate everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, but you've got a disaster party celebrating, especially with COVID, especially with pivoting and everyone trying new things. Not everything's going to work. What do you do in a disaster party that's going to help your mind and everything that we're talking about?
So here's the deal. If you're listening to this, I have a complete cheat sheet on how to host a great disaster party that all you need to do is email me for that cheat sheet. And ideally, it wasn't a concept that I originated. A friend of mine in the fitness industry began doing this concept. And so I took what he was doing and expanded upon it, knowing the brain and how to get groups involved. What I love about the disaster party is any generation, any gender loves to play. So it's very tactile. I have things now when we are doing it online, they get finger paint kits, they get glitter glue, because that's what I have on the table. So I know if they get stuck, I'm like, oh, just glitter glue me a picture, or, do a little finger painting in there. And so I know that the tactile and the right and left brain will start talking to each other. And usually when someone is stuck, it's because the creative side has stopped talking to the results side. And so if I can open up that dialogue, great communication between both halves of the brain, magic happens. So the way it is, it's a 3-part process, usually done with 12 to 17 people. I've done it in groups of 300-400. I don't recommend that, but an executive team. And the concept is you come in and everybody plays against each other in part 1. And so we pick something very easy to disaster, say company's 50th anniversary. And so the person to my left, I'll say, what is the tiniest thing you can think of that could go wrong with this? Typo in the invitation. Okay, guys, all typos are off the table. And so I write that down. Next person, you have to get a little bit bigger. So you go around the table once and you're getting some, and everybody has to outdo the next. And so if you give me something creative, pioneering, you personally get a present. So the second time around, we're doing medium disasters. Third time around, we go bizarre. Plane crashes in the building, which has actually happened during one of our anniversary parties. Owner of the company dies. That actually happened. So they start and they go, what? And so the funnier they get, and I always say it has to be realistic. No aliens, no zombies, no Godzilla. It's gotta be believable. And so then the reason I take them to stage 3 is I want them to laugh so hard they hit that dopamine button in their brain. I call it the dose: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Now they're so creative. And I don't let them pick their partners. We break up into groups of 3, and they all chose a candy bar. Okay, all my Twix people over here. Okay, all my Hershey chocolate bars. Or sometimes I do animals. Like all my cougars, come close to me. I like the cougars. And then we make a joke. So now I give them each a third. Say there's 5 groups. I give them 1/5 of the mini disasters, the medium disasters, and the mega disasters. And we've got a time limit. We've got a call to action. It's like, all right, you have 17 minutes and 53 seconds. Here's the prize. Your owner of the company has put up $100 dinner, limo, movies, dream date. Each of you in the group of 3, each of you will get that. To qualify, you have to have at least 3 workable solutions for each of those disasters. Totally workable. I'm the judge. The more you get, whoever has the most workable solutions, then your group will receive the prize. Go. And so I sometimes go a little bit longer because these solutions are great. Like, they're amazing. And so they're money in the bank. They're either making money or saving money. One of my clients saved over $250,000 a year with one solution from a mechanic, a car mechanic.
So what you're doing is taking them to the edge of disaster, taking into disaster, resetting their brain, problem solving, and giving them actual actionable move again.
Yes.
Which
and
is
then the
ingenious.
last part, they come together, and that's where they do their bragging rights. So the group will tell their most favorite disaster and their most favorite solutions. When we did it at EO, we had a team from Africa. They were running a charity golf tournament. And one of their disasters was that they had a lion on the course. And everybody in the room was like crying. And this woman goes, no, we did. We actually did this. This happened. And I went, okay, you win the prize, because that's a really good one. So it makes them stretch like, what? That really happened? And then it's like, wait, okay, we have 17 minutes and 37 seconds. And what I love is we create a disaster party diary, and then they decide who's responsible. Who's responsible for reading invitations or print work 3 different ways? Like, who does that? And so it brings back the fourth part of change, and that's accountability. And we are lacking in sports, in the boardroom, at home. We're lacking accountability. If you want change to occur, you first have to have awareness in everybody's own brain language. Second, you have to have acceptance. I may not agree with you, but okay, I accept the fact we're going to paint the walls purple because feng shui is better. Third, we take action, which is where most people start. They go, let's get a consultant, let's get a coach, a trainer. But the fourth is where very few organizations say, you're responsible for this. This is your accountability. The buck stops here.
That's perfect. That's wonderful. Anyone got any questions? Please flip on your cameras, your microphones, and ask the doctor questions about some of this as the brain adjustments, pivoting. Again, and a lot of this, as we're seeing, does apply to us presenting on the virtual stage as well. I see Kevin threw his camera on. Good evening, Kevin. You got a question for us tonight?
I sure do. Thank you, Rich. And thank you very much, Dr. Kaz. I appreciate your story about Australia. I had the opportunity to live and work in Sydney for a year myself, so I just loved it there.
Absolutely.
And they're very sports minded, as we all know. So that rugby and the Aussie rules. So I was wondering if you can relate to us one of the challenges that you encountered, say, with an athlete, and how you turned that around. What was the outcome?
I have so many. My most favorite Australian athlete story, and I now do teenagers, but I had this young boy, he's probably 9 or 10, Alex, and his mom said, please coach him. His cricket game, he is brilliant, but he gets so inside his head. So Alex and I worked together for about, 8, 9 months. We're coming up on a national competition in his age group for cricket. And for those who don't know cricket, it's like baseball, but it's not. But the bowler is like our pitcher, and they have certain things. If they knock the wicket off these 3 sticks, they can gain a point, and they can also win the game. And I don't know a ton about cricket, but Alex was a bowler, and we're down to the very last pitch. And either he takes this little, popsicle stick that's about 50, 60 feet away from him, maybe more. If he bowls and the batter doesn't bat it, doesn't hit it, then he gets the wicket, his team wins. If he doesn't hit the wicket, his team loses. So we're in the stands. And to me, cricket's like watching paint dry. It can take days. So this little guy, he gets ready. You can see the determination, and he's ready to make his, do his bowl. And all of a sudden he turns around, and his mother looks at me, and head goes down. And it's like 2 minutes. And everyone's like talking. The newscasters are like, is he scared? Is there fear? What is happening? And she said, Kaz. And I said, his shoulders are up. He's okay. I'm not quite sure what he's doing. He might be doing posy talk in his head, but he's okay. And so he turns around, and I said, oh, he's got this. Like, he has got this. Well, he rips this bowl, knocks the wicket off. Then everybody goes crazy. Well, the reporters just crowd this little guy. Like, were you scared? Were you praying? What were you doing? And he goes, no, I was visualizing. Kat said, if you visualize the outcome, you will get it. And he said, it just took me a little while. I thought, okay, schooled by a 9-year-old. And the reporters, this is 1990, 91. And they're like, what?
Well, and for the virtual stage presenter, visualization is a huge thing. We're all in rooms by ourselves. Now, as a broadcaster, I've been doing this for 30 years. I talk about this almost every show. I've been playing pretend for years. I think there is a crowd in front of me every time I turn on the microphone. We're now trying to figure this out. So that whole actualization, visualization, is such a huge component to get speakers unstuck on this stage. I know a lot of great speakers that are struggling just to move on this stage, and it is a stage, but they don't see it as a stage. So that illustration is great to understand. You have to change your mindset. You have to rewire yourself and then play to the crowd, play to the lights, play to the wardrobe on the other side of the camera. I don't care what it is. You got to play to something and really do it. Great story. Everyone else got a
Virtual
question for us?
stage is a stage of millions. That's what
Yep.
I tell my friends. I say, the largest stage I've been on is 5,000, maybe 6,000. I said, are you kidding? When I get online and do anything, I'm like, this is a stage of millions. And for the CEOs, this is an audience of buyers of a million,
Right.
millions and millions.
Anyone else got any questions? That was wonderful. Thank you, Kevin, for that one.
Thanks very much, Dr. KAZ.
My pleasure.
Anyone else got a question here tonight? Otherwise, you talk about always prepare for that disaster party, but you also said you got the three P's. The three P's you talk about is present, and I think I got this right. Present, proceed, performance. Or am I getting that wrong?
Presentation precedes performance.
So talk about presentation precedes performance. That's all the mindset of preparing yourself so it does go flawless.
Well, it is. And I got that from a great client. He was the largest Ford dealer in the Gold Coast in Australia, sold the most Ford cars. And he had a 5-acre lawn in front. In the Gold Coast is kind of like Vegas. He was right in the middle. So you can imagine a hotel having 5 acres of grass, nothing to sell, just beautiful presentation. And I said to him, dude, how come you don't have cars out there? Like, what the heck? And he said, oh no, presentation precedes performance. And I realized at that moment, it was not only visual, but people would laugh and say, how much time do you practice a speech? I'm like, oh, I'm like 10, 15 hours for every 1 hour talk. And they're like, what? And I said, yep, I have these little index cards, green, gold, yellow, and pink. Yellow is content, green is stories, and pink are quotes. And all over my living room floor, I'm like, green, yellow, pink, green, pink, yellow. And I get finished and go, oh, too many yellows, too much content. And so my presentation, it may have looked like I was just up there having a fun time, just chatting with them. But I would always know when I ran the dogs in Australia on the beach, if they just totally ignored me, it wasn't a good talk. I wasn't excited about it. My excitement wasn't transferring to them. And so I go back to the drawing board. And my friends are like, you let your dogs running. Look, excitement is excitement. Dogs know it. People know it. If I love it and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great story, that was fun, then I'm having a good time. And so if you were thinking about going to the online stage, you really need to consider presentation precedes performance. Give that presentation 500 times on Zoom or 300 or 200 and really figure out, man, my energy, go back and watch yourself and go, what happened? My energy went so down there. What did I get confused, lost? And that's really my athletes will practice a golf stroke hundreds of thousands of times. And I ask myself, how many times do I practice an opening to one of my talks? How many times do I practice a story? Tiger Woods said it the best. Why do you eat 1,000 balls a day? Like 15, 20 years into your career, why do you do that? And he's basically because that's what made me great. That's what's going to keep me great.
Well, and that is one of the biggest transition points right now. People are getting shrinking in. They don't know how to do the energy. They don't know how to use their hands with the camera. They don't know how to play to the camera. And so they're reducing the energy level. And so, like you said, TV actors know how to bring it fuller. They make their expressions bigger, more dramatic. It's not flying all over the place. It's actually placed and planted intentionally. As speakers, as leaders, as executives, you have to practice it. You have to get used to doing it. You also have to know your content better because cue cards and scripts and papers and all that stuff. Practice your zooms, your transitions into the whiteboard, into other content, into YouTube clips, whatever it is you're bringing in. Practice all those transitions so it's smoothless and seamless because whether you like it or not, you are the star, not your content. This is now TV. This is now broadcast. You are now the star.
And here's the thing. When I used to, long before computers and LCDs and all these different things, I would have to maybe start the music. So I'd go over to the boom box and then I had to go to the overhead projector. So I would have them play a game. I'd pass a game out and say, this is a word search puzzle. Look left, look right, see who looks smarter, pick that one. With your partner, you got to get at least 10 words, qualify for a prize, go. And while they're down there doing this, I'm going to the music, I'm going to the overhead. Run a poll, while you're doing something, looking for that. Whatever you need to do, you can distract. I mean, I taught hospitality for years, did training in hospitality. And I used to say, never look at the tray of drinks. Never stare at 4 32-ounce mugs of beer about to crash on you. Always look at the face, always get them talking, getting them looking at you. Because if the glasses are clinking, everyone's like, I'm wearing a beer. No, and so it is draw the attention. And that's what I used to teach. I love my kids that are in team sports. Like, let them think you're coming in from the left side with the ball and then shoot the pass, bring it in from the right. Like, let them think one thing, go do what you need to do.
Well, guys that do magic always talk about misdirection. Watch me over here. Well, you don't see what I'm doing over here because that's the illusion. And, you've also got the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the guy behind the curtain. And so this has been done for years and years and years. I'm really interested on, you speak of game changers. What is, again, from a sports broadcaster, I know what game changers are. I talk about it all the time in the middle of a broadcast, but to you in this whole area of game changing, the mindset, the virtual stage, what is a game changer?
For me, it's very simple. Game changers are anything that stretch you emotionally, physically, spiritually. Game changers are, if I had to put a word to it, they're a calculated risk. So I'm not going crazy and investing in the stock market or buy whatever, but like a game changer on stage for me is when the energy changes, or I focus in on someone that looks so unhappy, so cranky. And I think, I'm getting him to smile. I'm going to get a chuckle from him. And, there have been times, I once had the Olympic swim coach stand up in a room of about every Australian swim coach in the country was at this conference. And I was explaining brain language. And Lori stood up and he goes, "You're wrong." And I thought, yeah. And everybody looked at him, looked at me. And I thought, this is not how I'm going to have my talk remembered. This is not. And so, but I knew he's a power and control. And if we butt heads and he doesn't win, he will be very angry and offended. And I had wanted to chat with him for probably 2 years. So I said, Lori, you may be right. I've been wrong a lot of times. However, I think I was wrong in how I communicated it. So may I just state it a different way? And then if I'm wrong, dude, call me out. And so I restated it. And he sat down and he smiled. And And he realized, oops, I might have actually heard wrong what she said and jumped to conclusion. And at the end, he just gave me one of these, like, we're good.
Yep.
And the only thing anyone could talk about was how Lori Lawrence admitted he was wrong wrong. And I thought, isn't that funny? And the next day he called me up and said, I would like to have lunch with you. He said, I think there is something to offer. Because he would say, there's nothing mental about winning an Olympic gold medal in swimming. It's
Well, see, and to me, that statement sounds absurd because I've talked to coaches, interviewed coaches, athletes like you have. So much, especially gymnastics and swimming, it all is mental. You have to be in the right frame of mind to jump off that board. You have to be in the right frame of mind to go do the pole vault. It is so much a mental game set, because those are all, yes, they're team sports, but they're individual. Like I was a gymnast. The battle is really me, myself, and I is really the game. I might score points for the team, but I'm on the pommel horse. It's me. And that, again, visualizing the whole set, going through, actually doing the hand motions on the ground, that is a mental adjustment to go do my performance flawless on the pommel horse. And again, we have to do that now on the virtual stage. We have to do this as CEOs, as bosses, as leaders, as pastors, leaders, whatever industry you're in. Everyone that's jumping in here has to do that mind shift.
Well, here's what's interesting. One of the game changers is, are you the type of person that can party in the brain? So can you take a moment and go, yes, that was awesome? Or is it, good job, what's next? Good job, what's next? Because if it becomes, the brain will do more of what it feels that gets excitement or gets recognition. So I got a text from a golfer, love my little sophomore Sarah. And I said, how was the tournament? What 3 things are you most proud of today? And she texted back and said, nothing. Completely disappointed. I have nothing I'm proud of. So I really asked score and I said, all right, I've got to find the pattern here. I'm thinking, did she shoot 80, 82? Normally we're like 77, 78. She goes, no, shot a 71. Okay, you're 1 under par and you're disappointed. Like, we have to change this.
Yes.
Because, it's like you do something well and I'm going to whack you. No. So many people are whackers. Someone in their team does something phenomenal and they have trouble complimenting. Well, that's what I pay you for. No, celebrate. Whoa, great idea. Didn't expect you to finish so quickly. That's awesome. How are the kids at home? Love the Zoom with your 3-year-old behind picking his nose. I've had that happen. We need to celebrate. Yeah, we need to celebrate. That's a game changer. And I watched that happen in Australia. I watched CEOs who grew their companies by 2, 3, 4 zeros on the bottom line because they celebrated their team.
And that is one of the things inside this new virtual stage people are slowly getting accustomed to. It is a different performance, different stage. The crowd is different. The Zoom box, you don't get the applause, you don't get the breathing, you don't get the sound of the crowd. And it's a big adjustment. Was that a win? Was that a good performance? Did I stink it up today? So you have to find a way to celebrate and say, I really rocked it. I did everything I could today. You get some emails, you get some follow-up little chat boxes, you share some content, you set up another virtual coffee. It's a different form of win, but you have to celebrate those as that was rocking good. Before we wrap up here in a few moments, I want to remind everybody next week, Trisha Ben is going to be with us. Trisha is the CEO, the COO, not CEO. Ooh, Jeffrey would kill me for that. She's the COO of C-Suite. She's a speaker, she's an author, a great leader, and she rocks this whole mastering the box and the crowd and everything. It's going to be great to have Trisha with us next week. In 2 weeks, Mike Scribnick will join us. He's the CEO, founder of the Grow, Get, and Coach. He helps businesses grow, continue to monetize, and actually sell, especially through this virtual landscape. Yes, you can sell here on the virtual stage. So we're going to have Mike in there in 2 weeks. Dr. KAZ, in the final moments we have left, what's your best, short, concise Hit me with something good. What's your best takeaway of the night?
I always end my talks with this: care more than others think is wise.
You
Risk
did not
more.
just say that. Wait. You did. Did you watch my risk video?
No.
Those are my 4 CEO risks. You just took number 1. Go on,
Risk,
please.
care more than others think is wise. Risk more than others think is safe.
2 for 2.
Dream more than others think is practical.
3 for 3.
And expect more than others think is possible.
Dr.KAZ has 4 for 4 on my whole risk. Those are the 4 greatest risks that leaders can take. I have a talk on it. You have a talk on it. That is amazing to end the show on that note. I love it. Dr.KAZ, has been a privilege to have you on here tonight. I cannot thank you enough. And again, we will have this on playback, on repeat, and it'll also eventually go up to C-Suite TV as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Again, next week we'll go live again at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, How to Rock the Virtual Stage. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining us. And for Dr.KAZ, I'm the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. God bless. Have a great week, everybody.